You ready?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to episode 6 of Paige and Micah in the PM. We've got a good episode for y'all today as the college football season starts to wind down and the race to the playoffs gets closer. Let's jump right on to the Conference Center for an in-depth look at where teams currently stand and what the future of each conference looks like. You ready to go, Micah?
Yeah, let's get into it.
All right. Starting us off, we're going to go in the ACC. We had Virginia at number 9, Louisville. Louisville narrowly escaping that game, 31-24. The Cardinals were up 14-0 at the half, and Virginia scored 21 unanswered points in the third. Micah, tell us a little about this game.
Yeah, this game was pretty crazy. Had a lot of Louisville fans scared, I think.
Yeah.
Virginia this year, only 2 wins, but one of them was an upset over then top 10 North Carolina and playing another top 10 team very close in this one, at least in the AP rankings. So credit to Virginia in this one, and Louisville, as you said, the unanswered points in the second half really helped them in this, obviously. Being able to come out on top and win this, you really keep your momentum going forward into an ACC championship game appearance versus Florida State possibly at the end of the year.
Yep. The Cardinals had a 73-yard go-ahead touchdown for the game winner. This is a really crucial game for them as they are a top 10 team, and this is really going to help decide who they end up playing potentially in the ACC championship.
Maybe even some Orange Bowl hopes if Florida State makes the playoffs.
Maybe, yes. Next we have Miami at number 4, Florida State. Another close game for Florida State. The Seminoles came out on top this one, 27-20. Jordan Travis had 265 yards and 1 touchdown. Teams were tied at the half. Miami really just controlled both sides of the ball, but Florida State was able to come out with a win.
Yeah, this is one of those games where a top team goes in, and these are the teams that are the games that make championship contending teams, where it's a rivalry game, you're not on your best form, and you still find a way to win like Florida State did in this one. As for Miami, freshman quarterback Emory Williams, I was impressed with him in this one, to be honest. I could see why they wanted to start him over Tyler Van Dyke, and then Van Dyke comes back in after the injury to Williams in the fourth quarter and immediately almost throws an interception to lose the game. So brutal for Miami, although Florida State, another close win after Pitt the week before. So these Noles better be careful, because if they go in slow into Gainesville, I'm not saying they'll lose that game, but you don't want to be off your game in the swamp.
For sure, and with Florida's performances last weekend too, the Seminoles really have a lot riding on them to see where they end out at the end of the season. Finally, in the ACC, we've got a big game in the state of Carolina. Duke at number 24, UNC. A 2 overtime game, and a failed Duke 2-point conversion gave the Tar Heels the win. Wow. This was a crazy game.
I don't know if you saw the play that North Carolina won it on in double overtime, but Drake May ducking in between guys, kind of a half jump throw to just a wide open receiver in the end zone. I thought he had airmailed it at first, but it found his guy. So great game from May, throwing for 342, a touchdown. Did throw a pick, but still overall very good performance for Drake May in this one. And Duke just what could have been this year for the Blue Devils.
Yeah.
So much preseason hope, so much preseason
hype. Yep.
You beat Clemson to start the year, and then it's pretty much been all downhill from there.
So sad. But our current conference standings in the ACC, we've got Florida State sitting up top at 8-0, Louisville following at 6-1, and North Carolina, NC State, and Virginia Tech both at 4-2. Micah, how are we feeling about the ACC?
So you're probably going to end up at this point with a Florida State-Louisville matchup in the ACC title game in Charlotte. That should be a very competitive game, very close game. The Louisville defense should really be able to help them out, slow down Florida State in that one. I'll be curious to see if the Louisville passing game can really get it going, because that's been one of their weaker points this year, and the Florida State pass defense has been pretty good this year. So unless they can figure that out, I see Florida State winning if this matchup happens. But kudos to both teams, obviously. Florida State, we kind of expected this from, but Louisville coming out of nowhere this year.
Nowhere. But I think, personally, that the Seminoles really have this one locked in. Moving over to the Big Ten, a really, really big game in the Big Ten as number 3 Michigan traveled to Happy Valley, took on number 10 Penn State, came out with a win 24-15, but dang, this game, I mean, from 2 quarterbacks who, we've talked about a lot. J.J. McCarthy went 7 for 8 and 60 yards. Like, this is not a real stat, I swear.
Yeah,
he was 0-0 in the second half. Like,
didn't attempt to pass in the second half. I think there's a lot of jokes going around right now with JJ McCarthy going on Twitter and posting, "Oh, bet," after
Yes,
Harbaugh gets
yes.
bet, and then he goes 7 of 8, 60 yards, and everyone's like,
Bet.
"Okay, what do you really think you're doing here?"
What are
Okay, allow me to defend JJ McCarthy for a minute, everyone. At the beginning of this game, Michigan's right tackle was getting consistently destroyed by Penn State edge rusher Chop Robinson, who is probably going to be a top 10 or 15 pick in the draft come spring. So if you know you can run it with your 2 NFL-level running backs in Blake Corum and Donovan Edwards, why not just do this? Why not just keep doing it if Penn State can't stop it? So I think this says less about J.J. McCarthy and more about the Michigan run game and the Penn State run defense.
Yeah. Speaking of Penn State, Drew Aller going for 70 yards and 1 touchdown. I mean,
on 22 attempts.
22 attempts, so a little bit more than our guy J.J. McCarthy. But Michigan being down at the half was a little scary. I think fans, after all the stuff with Jim Harbaugh, we'll get into that in a little bit, but fans are definitely starting to worry a bit. But I mean, they dominated the rushing game, going for 227 yards, came back to win the game. Blake Corum ran for 144 yards and 2 touchdowns. Very good, and just was really the shining star for this Michigan team, for sure. And then finally, a game that we kind of expected to be a big blowout, but we had to put it in here, was Michigan State at number 1 Ohio State. The Buckeyes coming out of this game with a 38-3 win. Kyle McCord going for 335 yards, 3 touchdowns. Micah, are we making Ohio State fans angry this week?
Indeed we are.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, this Michigan State pass defense is outside of the top 50 in the FBS, and their schedule has been against teams like Iowa, against teams like Rutgers, teams that do not have these high-flying passing offenses, and you're still outside of the top 50. What did you think was going to happen? Like, this Michigan State team is so out of sorts this season after Mel Tucker being gone so early. They're completely in disarray. I just can't give props to McCord. I rephrase that. I can't give props to McCord. He played well. I don't think this changes my opinion of him in a championship level game.
Okay. We'll see how that plays out for the rest of the season. Ohio State's defense was missing a lot of key players, but they did hold Michigan State to 182 yards. So, I mean, we've talked a lot about this team and how we don't think they deserve to be number 1, but looking at these stats,
you held a terrible offense to under 200 yards. Good job.
Okay, but it's still holding a team. So
it's terrible though.
Okay. All right. Moving on, Big Ten news. Jim Harbaugh was suspended for the final 3 games, which kind of like a full circle moment, not really in a good way. He did miss the first 3 games, but what does this say about this Michigan team having to play half of their season without their head coach?
Well, with how they played this year, I think it shows just how good this Michigan team is, because they're still demolishing teams they should demolish, and then against top 15 competition like this Penn State team, still winning, especially on the road as well. So I think you have to give credit to Michigan, and although there may be some kind of backhanded things going on there with the whole sign stealing, I still think you have to give them credit for being a very good team.
I agree. I still think they should have that number 1 spot, but I mean, we'll find out in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Conference standings for the Big Ten. Currently, Michigan and Ohio State lead with 7 wins, no losses. Penn State at 5 wins, 2 losses. In the West, Iowa's also at 5-2, and everyone else but Purdue is 3-4.
Yeah, the West is just a whole bunch of mid this year, and then Iowa out ahead of it, scoring like 1 point a game and still winning somehow. So kudos to the Hawkeyes for that. But the Big Ten is really going to come down to who is the East representative in the title game, who wins the game between Michigan and Ohio State this year. Whoever wins that game is your Big Ten champion. It's as simple as that.
And is also going to be probably your Big Ten contender in the college football playoff. So a lot riding on these next couple of weeks for the Big Ten. And the Big 12, number 15 Oklahoma State was at UCF. Just had to laugh a little bit because the score of this game was also not real. UCF winning 45-3.
Ladies and gentlemen, the power of space uniforms. They should wear those every week because they floored the Cowboys this past weekend. Oklahoma State did not stand a chance.
I'm thinking we need a Paige and Micah uniform section in our show.
That'd be interesting.
So, like I said, the score of this game was not real, and that's just kind of all I have to say. I mean, Oklahoma State went for 225 receiving yards, 52 rushing yards, three interceptions. Sorry. Ollie Gordon entered the game leading the nation in rushing yards.
He was a dark horse Heisman contender,
He was.
by the way.
We talked about him a couple weeks ago.
I still think he's very good, but the UCF run defense in this one was insane.
So insane.
They held him to 25 yards on 12 carries. Anytime you're holding who I think is the best running back in college football right now,
He was leading the
they
nation.
held him to about 2 yards per carry, which is absolutely ridiculous. So massive kudos to the UCF run defense in this one.
That is just wild. I mean, I personally did not see this game going this way. Did you?
No, not at all.
No, so definitely a big surprise. But, I mean, big shout out to UCF. Gus Malzahn, great job, guys. Also in the Big 12, we had number 7 Texas at TCU, narrowly escaping that one. Another close one for Texas, 29-26. My guy, Quinn Ewers, is back, throwing for 317 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 pick, but it's his first game back, and he threw for over 300 yards. I mean,
Yeah, I kind of felt like I was watching the Texas-Kansas State game, though, with Texas going out huge early versus a purple team and then almost blowing it. So TCU tried to mount a comeback in this one, weren't quite successful, but the big news from this game is the ACL tear for Texas running back Jonathan Brooks. He was right up there, top 5 running backs in the nation this year, and you just hate to see a guy that good go down with an injury like that. Obviously, torn ACL going to be out the rest of the season, and we hope he's back early next year and healthy again, but big loss for the Longhorns.
A big loss, and this could really affect their offense. And for a Texas team that, you know, has some playoff hope, just a little bit, I mean, this is not really good news for them, especially right as they get their quarterback back too, and now they lost another star player. But in other news, TCU has to win their final 2 games just to be bowl eligible.
After being in the national
title game last season,
that's what happens when you lose about 80% of your offensive production to the NFL right there.
That's true, but just crazy. Again, I didn't see it coming, but big surprises. Texas Tech was at Kansas, winning that game 16-13. Big upset in the Big 12. They won on a late winning field goal. And Kansas did not score at all until the 4th quarter.
No, absolutely brutal for the Jayhawks. Backup quarterback hurt for them as well. Jalen Daniels has been out all year, and then Bean went down to the backup. And then once you're at a 3rd-string QB, there's not really much you can do. He looked a bit lost out there, to be honest. Tried to mount a comeback. They actually managed to kick a game-tying field goal with only about half a minute left in the game, but Texas Tech went right down the field and kicked the game winner. So just tough for Kansas.
Yeah, they did lose their Big 12 conference hopes after this loss, but you know what they say, Micah? There's always next year.
This is Kansas.
True.
But yes,
there's always next year.
They've been developing talent, so kudos to Kansas.
Yes.
Maybe you'll get them next year.
Good season, maybe next year. Our Big 12 conference standings, we currently have Texas at 6-1, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Kansas State, and Iowa State all at 5-2. So it's really going to come down to this next weekend to see who gets that game.
As it stands, even after the loss to UCF, Oklahoma State would join Texas in the Big 12 title game in Arlington due to tiebreakers over the other teams. They're right next to it, 5-2 in conference. Obviously, Texas in the driver's seat right now control their own destiny. Teams like Oklahoma, Kansas State need a little bit of help, obviously not having those tiebreakers. And a lot of these teams play each other the last couple weeks, so there's still a lot that could happen with this. Obviously, the Kansas State-Kansas game is going to be huge, so we'll see what happens with the Big 12. But right now, I still think this is Texas's conference to win, even with the Jonathan Brooks injury.
I do too. Way to go out with a bang, Texas. They're coming to the SEC next year, so got to win out their conference one last time. Moving over to the Pac-12, we had number 18 Utah at number 5 Washington. Another close game, another really good game. The Utes were up 28-24 at half, and then the Huskies scored 11 unanswered to, ultimately come back and win the game. But what does this say about this Washington team?
Well, I think the first thing we have to look at here is the Washington defense in the second half. Everyone knows the last few weeks that's been watching this. I've not really liked the Washington defense and their performances.
I believe you refer to them as Swiss cheese a lot.
Yes, I do. But this second half in this game, they finally locked down and did not allow a single point to Utah. If that defense can keep playing like that, they could win a second game over Oregon in the Pac-12 title game here in a couple weeks.
Which that would be. Ooh, I'm ready to see that one. I'm very excited for it. Our Heisman candidate, Michael Penix Jr., throwing for 332 yards and 2 touchdowns to lead the Huskies to this win. he's a guy we're going to be seeing in New York very soon.
Speaking of guys we're going to see in New York, Bo Nix also put up a good performance this week in Oregon's win at home over Southern Cal, 36-27.
Yes.
Nix with 4 touchdowns in this one. At the start of the game, he had his stat line was 2 of 2 for over 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's a pretty good start to a game.
Really good
So
stat.
Bo Nix came out flying, and they really didn't let up for that game. Another great game for Oregon, and then USC eliminated from Pac-12 title contention this season.
Again, I did not see that coming, but
I did, because the defense is terrible.
Swiss cheese?
I don't know. What
kind of cheese would
What's
that be, Micah?
even worse than that? 'Cause
Moldy cheese.
moldy cheese that's been like tossed in a garbage disposal, so there's really nothing left. They fired the defensive coordinator, so the person who made the moldy cheese has been fired as well. Everything is bad
There's
down
just
in
no
Southern
cheese.
Cal.
There
is no cheese left at all.
Also in the Pac-12, number 21 Arizona at Colorado. Another good win for Arizona. You know, Arizona's been hot. The Buffs. Okay.
Arizona, hot.
Okay.
Desert.
Anyways, the Buffs, not so hot. I mean, it's also cold in Colorado, so. But, I mean, just.
Welcome to Paige and Micah in the PM, where we tell you how good teams are based on the climate that they play in.
Paige and Micah, the weatherman?
No.
Anyways, back to football. Arizona won on a last-second field goal. The Buffs were up actually 24-17 at the half, but I mean another lead that they blew, and Arizona with their fourth quarter rally to win the game. Colorado's last 4 losses have been by a total of 25 points.
Yeah, absolutely brutal for them.
So
Arizona
sad.
offense, once again, Noah Fafita playing well. And Arizona keeps on rolling, so we'll see if they can make their way into a pretty good bowl game at the end of the year.
I think they can.
New Year's 6 is probably out of the question with how good
Probably.
both Oregon and Washington are, but they're going to be right in that next tier.
I agree. The conference standings in the Pac-12, we currently have Washington at 7-0, Oregon right underneath them at 6-1, Oregon State and Arizona both at 5-2. Arizona owns the tiebreaker over Oregon State.
Yes, what I think is important to note about that, though, Oregon State's next 2 games, they get Washington at home this week, and then they play in Eugene at Oregon for rivalry week. So this Pac-12 title matchup is not set yet. Oregon State can still have something to say about this. Oregon State is a very good team, very physical team. You should not overlook them. If you're a Washington fan or an Oregon fan, watch out for the Beavers. I'm not saying they win either of those games, but I think both of those games could be stressful for those respective fan bases. So it's all still to play for Washington, Oregon, and Oregon State at this point.
And for the Pac-12 itself, upcoming this weekend, we've got Washington at Oregon State, like you said, and Utah at Arizona. And I mean, these games are really going to decide a lot in the rankings. And just, I mean, this Pac-12, I've been saying this all season. This Pac-12 conference is not going down without a fight.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
this
feel
has been
so
the most
bad
fun.
too for Oregon State, because they're one of those teams like Washington State getting left behind, and with how good they are right now, you just hate to see that.
It's amazing, though. I mean, the Pac-12 was so fun this season. I don't know what you think, but I thought
It's been
fun.
great.
And finally, in the SEC, we have number 9 Ole Miss at number 2 Georgia. The Dogs getting the easy win, 52-17. Carson Beck throwing for 306 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. But I think the more important note is Brock Bowers is back.
Yes.
And this was much needed for them.
This Georgia offense right now looks frankly unstoppable. The Ole Miss defense, don't get it twisted, is not good by any means. But
More cheese?
not quite that level.
Okay.
Just kind of like a weak elastic band. But so the Georgia offense quite good this year. Ole Miss just was never going to keep up in this one. You see this matchup a lot. Okay, team with a high-flying offense, not really a lot of defense. They're going to play Georgia. Can they get it done? And the answer is always no, because Georgia can never let us have nice things.
No.
Anyway, so Georgia in this one reasserting their dominance, clinching their spot in the SEC title game. So good for the Bulldogs.
Very good for them. They went 300 plus on both rushing and receiving. It's just, Georgia just did really good.
Yeah.
Just per usual. It's the norm is Georgia coming on top.
But now I want to talk about Missouri again.
All right.
Missouri got Tennessee this weekend, and a lot of people are saying it's going to be a very close game. The spread was only 1 point, and Missouri murdered them. It was 36-7. Tennessee could not stop Cody Schrader at all, who still leads the SEC in rushing yards. Mizzou is still good. I I was worried they were going to come out flat-footed in this one. They did not. They
No
absolutely
worries for you.
demolished Tennessee. So this Mizzou team should be on to a 10-2 finish at this point in the year if they can beat Florida and Arkansas. And Eli Drinkwitz out there, great job coaching this team. Missouri hasn't had 10 wins in a minute.
I'm actually really happy to have Micah's Mizzou Minute back. Micah's Mizzou funeral last week
was
actually
sad.
was really sad.
That was
but
sad.
You know what? I love Micah's Mizzou Minute, so
Yes.
good job. So happy that you're happy, Micah.
Speaking of sad, let's talk about the Florida LSU game. Okay, so
Disclaimer. I jinxed Micah in this game. I was watching the game. Florida's doing really great.
they had just taken the lead.
Just taking the lead.
I get a text from her that says, Micah, Florida, and immediately they collapsed.
Fell apart.
So that was
one's
me.
on me. I'm really sorry, Florida fans, and I'm really sorry, Micah.
Florida allowed 701 yards in this game. I don't know if y'all know, but as Paige told me, that was a lot of yards. So many yards that it was the most in school history, and more than either Army or Grambling State allowed to LSU this season. This Florida defense is an absolute disaster. They are whatever is left of the USC defense. They are even worse. So bad. Get them off the field. Find a new defensive coordinator. I don't know what you need to do, but this is a sorry excuse for a defense being put out on the field this year, allowing almost 500 yards per SEC game now. And it's not like they've had as brutal of a schedule some other SEC teams. They just look lost and incompetent. They have no idea what they're doing. Graham Mertz is still playing well, but the Florida run game has been a massive disappointment this season. Montreal Johnson Jr., Trevor Etienne were both good against LSU, but they have been lost half the games this season. Graham Mertz has been the only consistent player on this team, and if you would have told me at the start of this season, I would have said you were insane. But just a horrible season for the Florida Gators this year.
Just a bad way to go out, and obviously Micah's a little upset, but you know what, Micah? There's always next season.
Well, top 5 recruiting class, so there is.
In SEC news, Jimbo Fisher is gone, and I mean, doesn't really matter because he had a $76 million buyout. I mean,
Oil money.
just at that point, like,
Yeah.
I just don't even know what to say. Like, that
Well,
was just my response.
I don't know if you heard about the Arizona accounting error where they just randomly lost $240 million. They might have to shut some athletics programs down at Arizona. I think we know where it went. The A&M boosters stole it and used it to fire Jimbo Fisher because that's the only way they came up with this much money. I don't know what they're going to do now, but knowing A&M...
Can't do journal entries. That's what's up. Anyways, lots of news in the SEC, actually. Mississippi State fires their head coach, Zach Arnett. Georgia and Bama for the title game.
This is what parity looks like. Alabama and Georgia. Way to switch it up, SEC.
Yeah, really. Just who saw this one coming?
Not me.
Not me.
I personally had Mississippi State and Vanderbilt this year, but what do I know?
You know what? Not even them. I mean, put Auburn in the SEC championship. Just kidding. But good Auburn news. Our Tigers are bowl eligible.
Yes. Arkansas
happy.
got destroyed. Auburn won that game 48-10. The first quarter was all Auburn, scoring 21 points in less than 8 minutes. The first Auburn punt return touchdown since 2014 by Keontae Scott in this one, first in SEC play since Chris Davis did it versus Tennessee in 2013. All around, just an excellent performance for Auburn. The defense played out of their minds as well. So kudos to the Auburn Tigers this week.
Conference standings, like we said, the SEC championship game matchup is set with Georgia and Bama. They both sit atop the standings at 7-0. Ole Miss and LSU right behind them at 5-2, and Missouri at 4-2.
Yes. So, again, if you're an Alabama or Georgia fan, buy your ticket to Mercedes-Benz.
They probably already have bought them.
They probably have. They probably bought them in July.
Probably.
Good for y'all again, I guess.
Our SEC preview for the week is Georgia at Tennessee. Micah, want to tell us about this game?
Well, if Tennessee wins, all this will do is hurt the SEC's chances to get a team into the playoffs since Georgia, as we said, has now locked themselves into the title game. But Neyland is a tough place to play.
It is. We've seen some crazy outcomes in Neyland. So.
I know Missouri just murdered Tennessee, but that's because Missouri's the best team in the nation, and y'all remember that. But anyway, I think Georgia is still going to be able to go into Neyland and win that game fairly easily because Tennessee, very reliant on the run game. Georgia's run defense has been really good as of late, so I think they shut that down. Joe Milton, not really the best when his offense is one-dimensional. He has to throw the ball, so I see Georgia coming out on top in this one.
With only 2 weeks remaining before conference championships, some of these top teams are really going to have to battle to prove that they deserve a spot in their conference title game. Heading into Pick 6, this week's CFP rankings come out at a little bit later time, so we're going to give you guys our predictions based on last week's rankings and team performances.
And let's be honest, the rankings shouldn't change that much because all these top 6 won.
They shouldn't.
So we should see the rankings be pretty similar. Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington, Oregon, for those of y'all that need a refresher. So that's where we sit right now.
But what we think it's going to be at the end of the season is
Georgia at 1 after going undefeated and winning the SEC. Michigan at 2 after going undefeated and winning the Big Ten. Florida State at 3 after going undefeated and winning the SEC. Oregon at 4 after avenging their only loss of the season versus Washington and being Pac-12 champions. Texas in at the 5 as a one-loss Big 12 champion. And then Ohio State all the way down to 6 once they figure out Kyle McCord's not good in a big game.
I think they just need to hire you, Micah, because this is really good. And if this doesn't end up being the final 6, I don't know what will be, honestly. Because, I mean, if you look at all these teams and where they stand right now, and I think just the big game for us is the Washington, if Washington-Oregon ends up happening, and that's then the game.
Yeah, those are your potential flips. If Ohio State beats Michigan, Ohio State will be in there. Michigan will drop out. Obviously, if Washington wins, they would be an undefeated Pac-12 champion, so they would be in as well. I think Texas does have a path. It's going to take a little bit of chaos, maybe some bad performances from Georgia. I think that's the only way Texas gets in is if Alabama beats Georgia. Then you would have Alabama and Texas, both conference champions with identical records, and Texas with the head-to-head win. So that's how I could see Texas sneaking in. I don't really see a path for Alabama at this point.
No, I don't really either. But conference championships are going to have a big effect on the top 6 and who ultimately ends up making the playoffs. When we come back, we'll look at the NFL after Week 10. You're watching Paige and Micah in the PM. Welcome back to Paige and Micah in the PM. Similar to the college section, we're going to take a look at where each team in the NFL sits in their division and who has a path to the playoff as we're a little over halfway through the NFL season. Dang, this football season flew by. So sad, but we still have some time left, so let's get into it. In the AFC East, Micah, the Dolphins at 6-3. Tell us a little about them.
Yeah, the Dolphins can't beat a team over 500 to save their lives. It's been over a year. They keep murdering teams that are under 500, but as soon as you get into a difficult part of the schedule, you get into playoffs, I think you get exposed really quickly. And then the Bills are honestly, we have to take a look at the Bills and say this is not a Super Bowl or a playoff contender anymore like we thought they were.
No.
They sit at 5-5 now. Josh Allen keeps throwing interceptions, keeps turning the football over. Their losses aren't even to a bunch of great teams either. They have losses to the Jets. The Jags are pretty good this year, but a loss to the Patriots.
Oh, God, that's so bad. That's bad.
Then a loss to the Bengals, and then Paige, why don't you tell us about their most recent loss?
Well, they did just lose to the Broncos, so good job, Broncos. Great job, guys. Broncos country, let's ride. But, I mean, for the Bills, let's not say that for them.
Yeah,
because they just have not.
Underperforming a lot
Very
this year.
underperforming.
The Jets still have an outside shot. They sit at 4-5. Unfortunately, they will have to discover the newfangled concept of the forward pass and how to block for it if they want to make a playoff run, which it doesn't look like they're able to do so far.
And the Patriots going to the Super Bowl. Just kidding. They're at 2-8, so that's not happening.
You know, close enough. You invert that 8-2, and they're pretty good.
Okay, but you know what? What do I always say? There's always next season. Maybe not for
Patriots are going to be even worse next year.
But anyways, in the North, the Ravens sit at 7-3. Their run game and their defense, I mean.
Yeah, they've been elite in the run game and on defense this year. The linebacking duo, I think, doesn't get enough love. Roquan Smith might be the best non-Fred Warner linebacker in the NFL. And then Patrick Queen was drafted at LSU. They tried to play him at Mike. He's a very elite athlete for the Ravens. Not necessarily your best, field general type guy, but he doesn't have to be anymore after they acquired Roquan Smith. So now he's free to just fly around, and because of that, this Ravens defense has taken another step up. The one question I do have with them is, can they finish close games? Can they put their opponents away when they need to? Because they've struggled with that a bit this year. They let the Titans get back in it versus them. They get the Cardinals. They let the Cardinals get back in it. And then the blown lead this past weekend versus Cleveland. So I think that's the one flaw with the Ravens right now is maybe easing up in the second half and letting your opponent back into games.
So I think really for them is just finish strong and you'll find yourself in the playoffs. which would be Ravens fans would love that.
Yeah, the rest of this division also right now sits in a playoff spot. The Steelers and Browns are both 6-3. The Steelers currently have been outgained in terms of yards in every game this season, and they are the first team in history to have a winning record through 9 games after being outgamed in every game because Steelers football. The Browns likewise have a great defense, kind of a middling offense, 2 teams that just that defense is going to carry them into a playoff spot, whether the offense wants to be there or not. And then the Bengals, I think their bad start might hinder them a lot.
Yeah, I think that Joe Burrow injury really hit them hard, but he's back now, so maybe they can pull something out of
Lost to the
this.
Texans, though. You're going to have to play better
Probably
than that.
not.
Especially at home. You can't lose to a team like Houston at home.
No. In the South, the Jags are at 6-3. They got smacked by the 49ers.
Yeah.
The Jags, I mean, we kind of had some hope for them, but I mean,
they're just kind of
this is just
quietly going about their business this year. Sit at 6-3 right now, leading the division. Although they better watch out because you know who's coming for the Jags right now is C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans.
Oh yeah.
Who only sit a game back at 5-4. In 2 weeks, they get the Jags in Houston. That game is going to be massive for this division race.
Especially after C.J. Stroud's amazing performance this past weekend.
He's been great the past few weeks. I think they have their guy. So we'll see if Houston can make a challenge for this division this season or if they're still about a year out.
The Colts are at 5-5 and the Titans at 3-6. I think at this point and in this division, both teams are done. And finally in the West, the Chiefs should easily win this division at 7-2. One of those losses being to the Broncos. Let's go. But anyways, the Raiders are at 5-5.
Yeah.
The Chargers are at 5-5. Micah is going to talk about them and how they make him feel.
The Chargers secondary has just been horrific this season. Asante Samuel Jr. is really the only positive presence as a cover player in the secondary. Derwin James has actually struggled quite a fair bit this season. I think it's going under the radar how much he struggled, to be honest. And he's hurt a lot too, so just off year for him. Then Michael Davis as your main outside corner, since Samuel plays the slot, is just not where you want to be. They're getting absolutely cooked week after week in the secondary, and you hate to see it because Justin Herbert is so good. This offense is so good. They've scored the most points in the AFC West of any team by about 40, even more than the Chiefs. And yet because of how bad this defense is, they sit at 500 and 5-5. So just brutal for them. They need to figure out the secondary.
Imagine being a Chargers fan.
Yeah, that would stink, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it really would. But imagine being a Broncos fan. I just have one thing to say, and that's Broncos country. Let's ride. And with that, we're going to move to the NFC. The NFC East, currently the Eagles sit at 8-1. They had a win over the Cowboys a couple weeks ago, and that really helps consolidate the division. But they've kind of just a little bit underperformed, just a little bit since the beginning of the season. Looking like they need some stronger second halves.
Yeah, struggle to put some opponents away like the Jets earlier this year. They're lucky they don't have to play the Commanders again this season because the Commanders give them trouble every time. I don't know what the deal is with that, but they always struggle with Washington. They struggled with the Vikings a lot earlier this year, and then in week 1, the Patriots. I know it's week 1, but those are teams you have to put away if you're going to be a Super Bowl contender. So that's nitpicking a little bit, I think, because the Eagles have still been really, really good this season. Obviously, best record in the league at 8-1, so you're going to have to nitpick to find a flaw.
Yeah.
Although, with their division rival, the Cowboys, you don't really have to nitpick.
Nope.
It's the big games.
Yeah.
They're 6-3, but they feel like the Dolphins almost, or they struggle to win these big games.
Really
I'd say they've been closer. They almost beat the Eagles, just a couple yards short in that one, but Dallas, it looks like, is not going to be able to get over the hump of winning the division again this year unless they make some kind of miracle run towards the end and the Eagles fall off.
Yeah, and same with the Commanders and the Giants. I mean, their time is
The Giants
done,
are horrific.
especially the Giants. But yeah, no, I think the Eagles really have the East locked in on this one. In the North, the Lions are at 7-2. They're continuing to play well. Hope's coming back for these Lions fans. The running game, want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so this Lions run game has really been starting to show out with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They both have been playing really well. Their usage is finally starting to even out a bit for Detroit, and that is just a thunder and lightning combo right there with Montgomery as the thunder and Gibbs as the lightning as your pass catcher as well. So absolutely amazing run duo for the Lions right now. But watch out. the Vikings are not that far behind.
They're coming.
They sit at 6-4. Josh Dobbs has been playing really well. The pastronaut for them with his little aerospace degree, but not a little aerospace degree. I'm sure it's a normal size.
Yeah.
But Vikings in striking range of the division, and they've been playing really well. Real feel-good story to see them back in here after Kirk Cousins going down with an ACL tear or ACL tear. Kirk Cousins went down with an injury that I have completely forgotten about because I don't remember these things.
He's just injured. That's okay, though.
Kirk Cousins is out for the year no, it's a torn Achilles.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins is out for the year with a torn Achilles.
I was thinking it was his foot, but either way,
Kirk Cousins is out for the year with a torn Achilles.
He's out with a torn something.
We would never question that. We would never forget what it is. It's a torn Achilles.
Never.
No one would ever say anything different.
I didn't say anything.
I didn't either.
Anyways, to finish out the North, the Packers are at 3-6 and the Bears are at 3-7. I mean, just not their season.
Imagine telling a Packers fan at the start of the year you're going to have the same amount of wins as the Bears at this point in the year.
I mean, they'd probably strangle each other, but you know what? It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. In the South, the Saints are at 5-5.
This division is just a disaster.
No one wants to win this division.
I don't want to watch this division anymore. It's so terrible. The Saints every week, the offense doesn't do anything. The defense kind of shows up, and they somehow win a game versus the Bears.
The Bears.
Then the Bucks at 4-5. Baker Mayfield, I think better than we expected him to be this year. Really bounced back a lot. Just a real talent gap on this team overall. Not quite where they need to be, although I think they've been outperforming expectations a little bit and still sit within striking range of this division.
They could do it.
And then, welcome back to the weekly, is Arthur Smith going to get fired yet discussion? Well, he finally gave his good players the ball. Bijan Robinson, 22 carries, 95 yards and a touchdown. Drake London and Kyle Pitts each had 3 catches, which was tied for the most on the team. London with 36 yards, Pitts with 30. The issue is they lost to the Cardinals.
Yeah.
And so Arthur Smith is never going to give Bijan Robinson the ball again, and that makes me sad because the talent on this team is so good, and he keeps wasting it, and he honestly should be fired.
I mean, yeah, I think after that, yeah. And finally, the Panthers.
They're bad.
Moving on. I mean, 1-8, we don't need to say anything else. Closing out with the West, the 49ers are at 6-3, a team that we expected to go,
not quite
undefeated, but
the best record in the NFL I was expecting for the Niners this year. And they now sit at 6-3, but major bounce back this week with an absolute drubbing of the Jaguars. This defensive front with Chase Young is now borderline unfair, especially versus a slightly below average Jags offensive line. So it's going to be tough to beat the Niners for the rest of this year, I think, with this defensive front. Seahawks still have the same record, though. They're right there. Gino's been a bit up and down. Run defense has been up and down. That's really the story of this team, is they're just up and down, and they keep finding ways to win games. But their schedule is about to get really difficult. They play the Rams this week, and then what do they have next after that?
After that, they've got versus the 49ers, at the Cowboys, then again at the 49ers, and then versus the Eagles.
Yeah,
so, I mean,
brutal 4-game
Seahawks
stretch.
Fans, I would just kind of hold on. It's going to be rough. So
it's going to be okay.
It's going to be okay, but it's not at the same time. But you know what? That's okay. That's okay.
As someone once said, there's always next year.
Always
I
next
still think they're a
season.
playoff team. They're still a playoff.
Okay, yeah. No, I mean, I think if they can perform well in their next 4 games, then totally 100%.
Well, even if you don't, if you beat the Rams, you're 7-3. Then if you lose 4 in a row, you're 7-7. I don't think they're going to lose 4 in a row. I think they get at least one of those. So then maybe you're 8-6, and you can win your last couple games. Go 10-6, maybe 11-6, win your last game of the year. So still definitely chance for the playoffs for them.
Yeah, for sure. And the rest of the division, I don't think we need to talk much about.
No, just the Rams and the Cardinals.
3-6 and 2-8.
They're doing stuff. Murray's back though, and he played pretty decent.
He did. He did.
Kudos to him.
Kudos to him, and kudos to the whole NFL. I mean, it's kind of chaotic right now, but I mean, we love the chaos, so we're here for it on PM.
Yep, Striking Midnight looks a little bit different this week. Normally we talk about our team whose time has run out on the year, but this week there really aren't a lot of teams that are super far out of the playoffs that we haven't already talked about. So this week we're going to look at the battle for the #1 pick and who is in best position right now to get the first draft selection. Right now it's the Panthers who sit at 1-8. The issue is the Chicago Bears own that pick. So the Bears have the Panthers pick as well as their own pick. So Bears potentially with 2 top 5 picks right now.
That's big for them.
The Cardinals sit at 2-8, and then the Cardinals also own the Texans' first-round pick, which isn't as good as they thought it would have been, I think. Then you also have the Giants right up there at 2-8. So it's really going to be Bears, Cardinals, Giants who gets that pick this year. I think whoever does, except maybe the Cardinals, I think the other 2 teams, Bears, Giants, go quarterback. Even with Daniel Jones in New York, I think you have to take a quarterback if you're in New York, especially with how good Caleb Williams and Drake May are.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think whoever, has that top pick is really just that's going to help a lot in the rest of the season.
You can't miss out on these generational talents at quarterback if you have the chance to this season, I think.
No, I agree. But with that being said, that's all we've got for this episode. Thank you for watching. We'll see you guys next time as we start to close out the football season. I'm Paige Hunter.
And I'm Micah Farmer.
And this has been Paige and Micah in the PM.